JC is in fact Lucifer. Okay. Yes. Now I know that probably offended some people. Maybe this is confusing some people. You know what I'm saying? But we're gonna be talking about it. All right. The reason why I don't say his name, Jesus, is because he's another god. He's not Yah. He's a god other than Yah. Okay? And Yah said, do not say the names of other gods. In this video, we're going to be talking about a lot of other pagan gods, so I'll try my best to not say their names. So, first of all, what is Lucifer? Okay? Lucifer is not one entity. Lucifer is a generic title for multiple entities. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. These are a type of spiritual being. Some of them just so happen to be fallen, which means Yah found iniquity in them and brought them to the earth, and that they will live as humans and die as men. You understand? As a punishment, because while they're in their angelic form, they cannot feel the pain of death. They cannot feel any suffering. So Yah sends them to this world so they can die and feel pain, to die like men, as it says in the book of Psalms chapter 82, where it says, I have said you are gods, but you shall die like men. Gods in that verse is Elohim. It is referring to the powers. Elohim means powers, the strengths of the heavens. Ophanim, seraphim, cherubim, etc., etc. The angels, the malachim, right? These are the powers. Whenever Yah finds iniquity in one of those, he sends them to the earth so that they can die like men. And they often become highly influential people and or kings of the earth. So in Isaiah chapter 14, starting in verse 12, it says, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? Now, first of all, let's just nip it in the bud here. This text is specifically talking about the king of Babylon, who wasn't even born yet, because Isaiah lived about 200 years before Babylon even came into the picture dealing with Israel, right? However, it's most likely referring to Nebuchadnezzar. When he died, the Babylonian Empire fell, right? And this is talking about the fall of Babylon. Now, Nebuchadnezzar is called Lucifer. He is one of these beings. And there's another one, the king of Tyre. We read in Ezekiel, it says, he was in the garden of God. He was in the garden of Eden, dressed in all kind of crystals and things like that. Yes, the king of Tyre that lived during the days of Ezekiel. Can you guys believe that? So these spiritual beings, when Yah finds iniquity in them, he brings them to the earth. This is what you call a fallen angel, but they're not necessarily angels, because the angels are malachim, which are messengers. These could be cherubim, these could be seraphim, they could be anything. If Yah find iniquity in them, they have to become men as a punishment, right? Because in the heavens, they can't feel pain, they can't die. So to come to earth as a man, as a human, is their punishment. You understand? And that's why we have the Nephilim and all this other stuff that went on. So let me just put it to you like this. Essentially, JC was one of them. Now, somebody might ask, so do you believe that JC existed? To be honest, yes, I do. So, first of all, when it said, oh, Lucifer, let's just first establish the fact that Lucifer is not even a Hebrew word. So in Hebrew, it's Hilal, and it's in the sense of brightness. These are the shining ones. They're a type of spiritual being of the heavens. All right. But his name means specifically the morning star. The morning star. You understand? Now remember when JC had the transfiguration, how was he described? He was described as a being of light. He was one of these bright ones. Okay, now we're going to be talking about this. It says, how art thou fallen from heaven? Notice I have a 1 behind it because that's the first point. Son of the morning, how art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations, which didst weaken the nations. So, again, this is specifically about the king of Babylon, but this doesn't only apply to the king of Babylon. Okay, there were many different influential humans that we think are humans that existed, who are actually the fallen ones. All right, and they all relate and correlate to this specific scripture. They fell from heaven, they were cut down to the ground, and they all want to weaken the nations. Which didst weaken the nations? That's the second point. Isaiah 14:13. For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. That's the third point. I will sit upon the mount of the congregation. That's the fourth point. In the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. That's the fifth point. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. Now, this is what Christ says in Revelation chapter 22, to correlate to my first point about him being called the morning star. Hilal, right? It says, I, JC, have sent mine angel to testify unto you these things in the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David, and the bright and morning star. And the bright and morning star. Now, stars are spiritual beings or are associated with spiritual beings. Now, for example, we read in the book of Job, chapter 38, verse 7, it says, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of Elohim shouted for joy. This is something called synonymous parallelism. It's a poetic device. Both parts of this sentence mean the same things. So morning stars and sons of God are equivalent. Okay. When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. So the morning stars are the sons of God, which are spiritual beings. Okay. Now, like I said, some of them are good. Some of them are bad. Some of them are not so good. Right now, right when JC was born, this is what happened. Matthew chapter 2, verse 1. It says, now when JC was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and we have came to worship him. So this being known as JC has a particular star associated with him, which means that he's not a regular being. He's some type of spiritual being. For example, in the book of Amos chapter 5, verse 26, but ye have borne the tabernacle of Moloch and Chiun, your images, the star of your God, which you made to yourselves. So our ancestors must have worshipped some God that we got from the nations, and we had a star associated with that God, because that God must have been some type of spiritual entity that did exist, that we worshiped. And it was what you would call a fallen, and it had a star associated with it. And that's the same thing that these quote unquote wise men of the East observed. And they believe that there is a man that was born who would have been associated with that star, because there was an actual event that took place. Two stars, star number 1 and star number 2, they're both named after false gods, but you guys can read what's on the screen, had very close conjunctions in the sky appearing to be almost a single bright object in the sky, guys. You guys know what a planetary conjunction is? When two planets align and there's one big bright star in the sky. Understand, the first star mentioned, the J, right? This is a big bright star, and the V is a very bright star as well. They combine. It's a big bright star in the sky. It's going to be you're going to see it early in the morning, about 4 to 5 a.m., right before the sun rises. And you're going to see it towards the east. And when these two combine, it's going to be really big. This happened around 2 to 3 BC. Pay attention to that one star, Jupe, right? Jupe, that planet, the big one, right? We're going to come back to that in a minute. Why that star specifically is very important. Okay? Now, those wise men of the East, we're going to be talking about who they were. All of the people in the region were Edomites. Let me just explain to you this, okay? All the people, when you read the whole New Testament, it's all about Esau. From the beginning to the end. From Matthew to Revelation. It's all about the people of Esau, because in 586 BC, when Nebuchadnezzar took the children of Judah into captivity in Babylon, the children of Esau was cheering them on, saying, "Destroy Jerusalem, destroy Jerusalem." Not only that, they were helping the Babylonians take the children of Judah into captivity. Not only that, they were killing the children of Judah who fled away. And not only that, they stole out of the houses of the children of Judah. So with that being said, Yah was like, you're not getting away with that. In 550 BC, the son of Nebuchadnezzar, Nabonidus, went against Edom and encamped against Edom, and Edom got so scared that they fled away. The ones who didn't flee away were taken into captivity in Babylon, but the ones who did flee away, they went to a port city called Ezion-Geber, which is right at the border of their land, and they went on ships into the Red Sea. The true Red Sea is what we know today as the California Gulf, okay, because the true Holy Land is in Western North America. They went to a territory that they traded with called Tarshish, right between Tarshish and Chittim. This is in East Asia, guys. East Asia is the only place that has peacocks, monkeys, and ivory. It says it in scripture. That's where we traded from Tarshish. Ivory, peacocks, monkeys. Okay, there's only one place on earth that has all three, and that's East Asia. You understand? And that's where the children of Esau fled to, because they would have known that route. They also were really good with the stars, so they were able to cross the Pacific. They were also very familiar with the land of Chittim, or Cathay in Hebrew, which is also Cathay, which is northern China. And that's exactly where they landed. If you read the book of Jasher, the children of Chittim actually had control over Edom for a while. And then, they would have dealings, in the ancient past. So they would have known already about the Pacific Ocean, how to cross it. That's why Ezion-Geber, the edge of Edom, took the children of Israel into the land of Tarshish. But anyway, when they got to northern China, they left their DNA there. That's why we see haplogroup E1B1B in northern China, specifically of the Han dynasty. They would have then left northern China into northern India. Some broke off into southern India, and we see their DNA there. From India, they went into the Middle East, and at that time, it was about 300 so-and-so BC, so it was about 200 years later, and that's when they started converting into Judaism, because they discovered the Torah scrolls, the Tanakh scrolls from the Library of Alexandria, and they would have recognized a lot of their history, and they would have claimed it as their own. In the process of them migrating from India to the Levant, they came across this people who lived in Iran, who spoke a language and had a script called Persepolis Aramaic, which wasn't technically any type of Aramaic at all. But they adopted this alphabet script, and this became modern Hebrew as we know it. That's why it looks so much different from, Paleo Hebrew that the Old Testament was truly written in. Around 250 BC, they started to make a whole bunch of copies of our Torah and our Tanakh. These became the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are written in Persepolis Aramaic. Also, Persepolis Aramaic became the Nabashian script as well. The Nabashian script is, the Nabashians are the Edomites. They lived in the cliffs of the rock over there in the Levant, in the southeast areas of the Levant. And that's not Hebrew, guys. That's Edomites language that he mixed with the people in Iran to develop, right? The reason why the Nabateans built their palaces in the cliffs of the rock, or the reason why the Edomites did it in general, is because these people, their wisdom was to live high up. Living high up was only an advantage. They did not see it as a disadvantage whatsoever. They were able to see the stars at night to gauge from, what time should they grow crops, what time should they go to war, where should they migrate to, etc. They used the stars for everything. Also, it kept them from flooding. So this is why JC in one of his parables says the wise man builds his house upon the rock. This is something that's basically a proverb from the nation of Edom itself. That's why they built their houses in the cliffs of the rock, so they can build their nest among the stars. In their mind, they were supposed to have the birthright because they were born first. But Jacob beguiled Isaac, right? That being said, it is what it is. Esau started to claim our identity over there in that land that they settled in. There was a Greek philosopher whose name was Theophrastus, and he described the Syrians, the whole land of Israel, or also known as Judea, was called Syria in its early days. Okay, this is because the original people, before they called themselves Jews, they called themselves Syrians because they were from the land of Seir, because they were Edomites. It has nothing to do with Assyria. When you see Syria in the King James Version, that's an addition because it doesn't appear in the Hebrew text. Okay, so anyway, it says, but the Syrians, the Jews indeed, because the Jews are Syrians, they are from Seir, they're Edomites. And I'm going to prove that. I'm not going to read all of that. I really don't have time. It's a whole bunch that I got to get to. I'm just going to read the stuff that I highlighted. It says, as belonging to the class of philosophers. What does philosopher mean in Greek? We know that philosopher simply means wise man. Remember, the men of Esau were called wise men. Yah said he will confound the wise men of Esau, right? So anyway, and also discourse with each other about the divinity. But in the night, they apply themselves to the theory of the stars, surveying them through prayer, invoking God. So they study the stars. You remember those wise men of the East? They saw the stars. This is what those philosophers, those Jews, those Syrians were doing. Okay? That's not something, that's not an Israelite custom, right? This is what the wise men of Esau did. Josephus lived around the time of JC. Those Jews have only been living in that region since about 300 BC. Okay, so they've only been in that region for about 300 years. But look, this was their history according to Josephus. Jews are derived from the Indian philosophers. They are named by the Indians Kalami and by the Syrians Judai, and took their name from the country they inhabit, which is called Judea. Before the name of their city is a very awkward one. They call it Jerusalem. Now, it's 2 points I want to point out. It said the Jews are derived from Indian philosophers, which means the Jews come from India, guys. And when they were in India, their name was the Kalami, because Kalam means to move. It can mean move or movement. People of movement, people that move. Because again, they travel from China through India, through Iran into this region in the Middle East. And they were nomadic. Okay, so they were called the moving people, or the Kalami. Okay, and these were Edomites, guys. So they came from India to the Middle East. They were not indigenous to modern Israel. We have sources from Josephus saying that these Jews did not come from Israel. They came from India. Before they were in India, they were in China. Before they were in China, they were in America. Okay? Now notice how he had to say the name of their city. It is a very awkward one. Okay? Notice how he had to introduce Jerusalem, because no Roman or Greek would have heard of Jerusalem before this. They brought that name to that region. in recent times. All right. Let's just understand this. So, second point is when Isaiah 14 says to weaken the nations. Weaken the nations. This is their goal. The Hilalim, right? Or the shining ones. This is their goal, to weaken the nations. Right? Matthew chapter 12, verse 25. And JC knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. Every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. Every kingdom divided against itself shall be brought to desolation. Okay, but that's his goal, because let me show you. Matthew 10 and 34, he says, think not that I have come to send peace on earth. If JC was the actual Messiah, that would be what he's trying to do. Send peace on earth, right? That's one of the goals of the Messiah. I came not to send peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's foes shall be they of his own household. This is what JC said his plan is. To divide everybody up. All right, even in their own house. After he said every house divided shall fall, every kingdom divided shall be brought to desolation. Okay? But he said that's what he's trying to do. He literally said that. Now this is what Micah said in Micah chapter 7 verse 2. Said the good man is perished out of the earth, and there is none upright among men. They all lie in wait for blood. They hunt every man his brother with a net, that they may do evil with both their hands earnestly. The prince asketh, and the judge asketh for a reward, and the great man he uttereth his mischievous desire. So they wrap it up. The best of men is as a briar, and the most upright is sharper than a thorn hedge. In the day of the watchman and thy visitation cometh, now shall be their perplexity. Trust ye not in a friend, put ye not confidence in a guide. Keep the doors of thy mouth from her that lieth in thy bosom. For the son dishonoreth the father, the daughter rises up against her mother, the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's enemies are the men of his own house. Therefore I will look unto Yahuwah, and I will wait for the Elohim of my salvation. My Elohim will hear me. So this is what Micah is saying, is a complaint about the state of the people because of sin, and how wicked we got, how sinful we got, that we couldn't trust each other anymore, and our enemies are even in our own house. So he said, I'm just gonna trust Yah because he's the only one I can trust. Right? This is indicating that Yah is against this type of division. Yah is against this type of corruption and evil. But yet JC came to do the exact same thing. Literally looks like it was copied, guys. Literally looks like it was copied. Now, then JC doubles down even worse and says in Luke chapter 14, verse 26, if any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, yea, even his own life, also he cannot be my disciple. Hate. He said you got to hate all the people of your life, even yourself, in order to be a disciple of Christ. Now, somebody might say, oh, look, Ayob, look, that's not literal. Christ is not saying actually hate these people. But then the problem that happens is that when we look at the Greek, you can see the word hate is the same word for hate that's used in every other verse that talks about hate in the New Testament. G3 404, mizio. It means hatred, to the test, especially to persecute. JC wants you to persecute your mother, your father, your friends, your family, your sister, your brother, and yourself in order for you to be a disciple. See, it's the same word that we see in Matthew chapter 24 and 9. Then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated. So in this verse, hate is corresponding to the word kill. Okay, in the next verse, it says betray. And then in the one that we see at the bottom in Luke, it says enemies and hate. So this is associated with enemies, killing, and betrayal. This is real hatred. The word actually means to hate. Okay? Now what's crazy, I just want to talk about Matthew chapter 24 verse 9. And then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. If y'all would have ever said this would have been a punishment and a curse for our disobedience against his Torah. But JC is saying this is a reward to those who follow him. This is an ass backwards teaching that we can find in the New Testament, that the righteous are going to be persecuted. Christ is telling you, if you follow him, essentially people are going to try to kill you, which means you are no longer under the blessings of Yah. Because Yah said, if you follow me, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to prosper you. I'm going to multiply you. I'm going to make the rain of your land plenteous, the crops of your field abundant. Yah says these things about people who serve him. But Christ says, if you serve me, people will persecute you. They'll try to kill you. You see what I'm saying? It's just, we seen the lesson in real life when the Israelite woman was, she had her house broken into by the police, and she was screaming in the name of JC, in the name of JC. And she still got shot. They still took her life. Why? Because JC said, he told you, they will kill you for my name's sake. He said that. He warned you guys. For all you New Testament Israelites, if you want to disagree with me, that's fine. But at least agree with your idol here. If you ever get pulled over by the police and you call on that name, JC, they might just kill you because JC said they would. He said they will kill you for my name's sake, which means JC is telling you, hey, look, as long as you follow me, Yah is not going to protect you. As long as you follow me, Yah is not going to have you under the blessings because I'm an idol. Because I am not Yah. That's essentially what Christ is saying here. Not to get off topic too much, guys. But anyway, on the third point, where it says that Lucifer he wants to be on the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. What is the mount of the congregation? Guys, this is the mountain of God. This is the mountain where all the angels, where all the seraphim, all the cherubim meet up, right, to behold the throne of God. This mountain is the location of the divine council, the same divine council mentioned in the book of Job, the same divine council mentioned in Psalms 82, the same divine council mentioned in 1 Kings chapter 22, verse 19 through 22, right, where Yah's in the midst of all his hosts, all his spiritual beings. They decide things, they discuss things that happen in the world, that happen in the universe. You understand? And it's in the midst of the great waters that are above the firmament. It is above all the stars of the heaven. You understand? That's important to know. This is what it says in Matthew chapter 4, verse 8. Again, the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. Now, what mountain in the Middle East is so high where you can see all the kingdoms of the world? This isn't no mountain in the Middle East. This isn't no mountain. Even Mount Everest, you wouldn't be able to do that. This mountain is not even on earth. Guys, in case you didn't know, the mountain of God was once on earth, but it lifted up and it's now in the heavens. See, there's something that scripture doesn't definitively say, but we can look at context between Genesis 1 in Genesis 5, we see people walking with God and in the presence of God, like Adam and Eve. We see Cain and Abel in the presence of God. Then Cain departed from the presence of God. We see Enoch walking with God. But then in Genesis chapter 6, verse 3, everything changes. It says, my spirit will no longer dwell with man, for he is also flesh. So his days will be 120 years. So this 120 years is 120 years into the flood. Before the flood, the mountain of God broke off from the earth and went into the heavens. Okay, that's why after Genesis 6, you always see God being referred to in the heavens, not on earth anymore. And then in Genesis chapter 11, in reference to the Tower of Babel, it said that he went down from heaven to look at the city which children of men did build. And then he went and said, let us go down and confound their languages. So now he's in heaven. Before that, he was never in heaven. Before Genesis 6, he was never in heaven. He was on earth. So the mountain of God is now in the heavens. That's why in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 13, it says, and he said in his heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mountain of the congregation in the sides of the north. So the mountain of the congregation is above the stars of God. It's somewhere near the North Star. It's not the North Star, but somewhere near the North Star. And that's where the mountain of God is today. So that's where JC was, looking down at the earth. And he was able to see all the kingdoms of the earth. The only way you can see all the kingdoms of the earth is if you are way above the earth. You know, not on earth. All right. Now, point 4, right, where it says that he will ascend into heaven. What did it say about JC? And it came to pass, while he blessed them, he was parted from them and carried up into heaven. So JC is matching all the stuff about Lucifer. Okay, he's matching it all. Now the 5th point, where he said, I will be like the Most High. Okay, John 8:58. JC said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am. What is that trying to say? He's trying to say, I am that I am. He's trying to say, I'm Yah. He's trying to say, I'm the Most High, right? John 8:59. Then they took up stones to cast at him, but JC hid himself and went out of the temple, going through the midst of them, and so passed by. And then in John chapter 10, verse 30, he said, I and the Father am one. He said, I and my Father are one. Trying to say he's the Most High. And it said, then the Jews took up stones again to stone him. And the Jews are smart because, you know, this man is repeatedly blaspheming. So now section 2, Yah is not his father. So JC constantly says the Father, the Father, the Father. But you would notice, unlike Jeremiah, unlike Ezekiel, unlike Isaiah, unlike Moses, unlike Daniel, unlike David, unlike anybody in the Old Testament, JC never calls Yah by name. You never see him say Yahuwah. You never see the Tetragrammaton in red letters. You never even see him say anything about Yah in at all. Then they used to say he says the Father repeatedly. Pay attention. He only says Father. He never actually calls him by name. I'm going to show y'all that JC doesn't really care for Yah. So look. Matthew chapter 17 verse 2. And was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as light. Now that's just to show you that his true, you know, when he takes his glory form, his angelic form, he basically is a Hilal, a shining one, a son of morning, a morning star. Okay, that's what he is. But then we go down to verse 5, it says, while he yet spake, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and behold, a voice out of a cloud which said, this is my son, in whom I am well pleased, hear ye him. So a voice spake to them out of heaven, declaring JC to be his son. Now again, it did not say that this was the Lord. It did not say that this is Yah. It just says a voice out of heaven. And how do I know this is not Yah? Because this is what Yah said in Exodus 19:9. And Yah said unto Moses, Lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee and believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto Yah. Now, this is what Yah told him. He said, look, I'm going to, come to y'all in a cloud, and I'm going to tell these people the commandments. Okay? Now, he did that in the next chapter, Exodus 20:18. And all the people saw the thunderings and the lightnings and the noise of the trumpet and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood afar off. And they said unto Moses, Speak thou with us, and we will hear. But let not Elohim speak with us, lest we die. Okay, so if we go up to the beginning of the chapter of Exodus 20, we see all the 10 commandments. The first thing Yah says is, I am Yahuwah your Elohim, which have brought you forth out of the land of Mizraim to be your Elohim. Okay? And this is Yah speaking directly to all 2 million Israelites in the wilderness. And they all hear this scary, scary voice. They all feel this earthquake. They all see the mountains shaking and the lightnings and the thunder. These people are terrified. Absolutely terrified. So they told Moses, please don't ever let that thing come back and talk to us. Just you talk to us, because we don't want to die. But this is what Yah says about the incident, right? Deuteronomy 18:16. According to all that thou desirest of Yah thy Elohim in Horeb, in the day of the assembly, saying, Let me not again hear the voice of Yah my Elohim, neither let me see this great fire anymore, that I die not. This is what the people were saying. Please don't let us hear this voice anymore, okay? Now, this is what Yah said. And Yah said unto me, They have well spoken that which they have spoken. Meaning, yes, I heard their prayer and I will answer it, okay? Verse 18 says, I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren like unto thee, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. And it shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words which he shall speak in my name, I will require it of him. Now, a lot of people think this prophet is JC, but this prophet is just any generic prophet. Yah is saying that because the people did not want to hear the voice of Yah himself, right? Yah is going to send a prophet to speak to the people. The first prophet was Joshua. Then we had other prophets, right? Then we had prophets like Amos, Hosea, we had Isaiah, we had Jeremiah, Ezekiel, etc. All of these prophets had the same purpose, because Yah wasn't speaking to the people directly anymore because they were too terrified. He's just going to send prophets now. Okay? And I can prove in the text that this is not JC, right? Because in verse 20 it says, But the prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. So if this was about JC, then why would y'all say, well, if this prophet speaks something that I didn't command, or if this prophet talks about other gods, that prophet shall die? If he knew that JC, his quote-unquote son, is so sinless and innocent and perfect, he already would know that, he would never talk about any other gods. He would never make up any, false prophecies. Right? So this is about just regular prophets, guys. This is about regular prophets. All right? So Yah said he will never speak to the people again. He will never appear in the cloud again. He will never make his voice heard from the cloud again. He will only send prophets. Okay? So you just read that in the New Testament said, a voice from heaven said, This is my son, all right, who I love. So with that being said, who was that? Because it wasn't Yah, because Yah said he's not doing that again, right? He's not speaking to the people again because they wanted prophets. So he's sending prophets. So who was that voice? It could not have been Yah, bro. And section 3, who was his true father? And I'm going to prove that it was this other entity, right, called Amra. I'm not going to say his whole name. Or Zuam, right? You can read it on your screen, guys. Now, this is the Egyptian one, all right? This is his father. I'm going to show y'all this is his father, okay? And this is the Greek one, all right? This is his daddy. The Greek version is called Zu. Not going to say his whole name. The Roman version is called Jew, okay? Or Jupe. Not going to say his whole name, right? I'm going to show you the attributes of Am, and we're going to show y'all that he's the same God as the father that JC keeps talking about, right? He started as a local god of Thebes, modern Luxor in Upper Egypt, originally associated with air, wind, and invisibility. His name means something like the hidden one. It was the God that cannot be seen, just like Christ describes his father. Now, this is how JC describes his father, right? He says in John 1:18, no man have seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, which is in the bosom of the Father, he have declared him. Okay. Now, we know he cannot be talking about Yah because it says it right here in Exodus 24:9. Then Moses, it said, then went up Moses and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu and the 70 of the elders of Israel. So 74 people total. And they saw the Elohim of Israel. Who is that? Yah. And there was under his feet, as it were, the paved work of a sapphire stone, and as it were, the body of the heaven in his clearness. And upon the nobles of the children of Yasrael, he laid not his hand, which means they did not die. Also, they saw God and did eat and drink. So these people saw God. And JC just said, no man have seen the Father. No man have seen God. So JC's God and our God is two different gods, right? One of them is invisible, this Egyptian God. Now look, let me break down Yah, right? The thing that the 74 nobles of Israel would have seen in that verse in Exodus, this is Yah's higher angelic form. Now, one might ask, how did they see the God of Israel if Yah told Moses, no man can see my face and live? Well, it's simply because Yah has many forms, okay? Yeah, one of Yah's forms is simply fire. One of Yah's forms is a cloud. One of Yah's forms is a man that looks like fire, from the foot up, fire. Or as a man 100% surrounded by white light, right? Or as just a man, right? Just a regular person, right? That was, the form that appeared to Abraham, the form that appeared to Jacob, that wrestled Jacob, the form that appeared to the children of Israel in Judges chapter 2, verse 2, telling them that they sinned, etc. So Yah has many different forms that he takes, and then he has his true form that he does not change, which is the universe as a whole. The entire universe bears the energy and the spirit of Yah. Every single thing contains Yah's spirit, just like it says in the book of Isaiah, your glory fills the earth. Just like how Solomon said, the heaven and earth cannot contain him because the spirit surrounds the entire universe. Just as it says in Psalms 18, no matter where you go, the bottom of the sea, the top of a mountain, whether you're in your mother's womb, whether you're in the grave, you're still going to be in the presence of Yahuwah. Everywhere Yahuwah is around us. But Yahuwah takes forms in many different forms, but his glory form that he showed Moses, this is his most glorious form that anybody can possibly behold and still live. You just cannot see the face of that form. You understand? That's what he showed Moses. Now, only a handful of people in the entire Israelite history Yah ever trusted with showing himself to them, whether it was in person or through a vision. He only showed himself to a few people that he knew feared him enough not to make an idol, right? If they would make an idol, he would definitely destroy them. Yah idol does not really fool with Yah. He just messes with the Father, his Father, okay? He just is the Father in heaven. He never said Yah's name, okay? So anyway, like, y'all don't find that suspicious at all? So this God, just like JC, he impregnated his own mother to make himself. Don't that sound like what happened to Mary? So get this, JC is God, right? God impregnates Mary so that God can be born. This is the same thing that happened in the Egyptian mythology of It says, in other words, he is the self-created God who metaphorically impregnated his own mother. The self-created God. Now also, is a trinity. In the Lydian hymns, Pete, and Ru are regarded as a trinity who are distinct gods with unity and plurality. The three gods are one, yet the Egyptian elsewhere insist on the separate identity of each three. Now here's their poem that they wrote. All gods are three. Ar, and Pete, whom none equals. He hides his name as He appears to the face as Ar. His body is Pete. Now also many other areas had their own divine trinities. In Greece, there were Zu, 2 and 3. I'm just gonna say 1, 2, and 3, right? The Phoenicians worship 1, 2, and 3. Rome worship 1, 2, and 3, but pay attention to the first one, Jupe. Again, in Greece, pay attention to Zu, right? They're all that morning star, because when that thing happened, right, in 2 to 3 BC, when there was a overlap of Jupe and Veen, right, those two stars, that's when they was like, okay, the son is born, the king of the Jews, the wise men of the east. He was the son of Zu. They seen that the male star Jupe and the female star Veen overlapped each other, and they said, okay, now we have a king that is born. Okay, I'm telling you guys, this is what happened. In Germanic nations, they were 1, 2, and 3. Regarding the Celts, one source states the ancient heathen deities of the pagan Irish, 1, 2, and 3, are doubtless the 1, 2, and 3, or the all-inclusive 1, 2, and 3 of the Hindus. So guess what? A lot of gods have 3 counterparts in one, because again, these things came right into many parts of the world. I want you guys to understand that, and it's all the same thing. In Sumeria, right, the universe was divided into 3 regions, each of which became the domain of a god. One's share was the sky. The earth was given to another, and another became the ruler of the waters. Together they constituted the triad of the great gods. Okay? Now look, we're going to show y'all JC's true image. Now I want y'all to understand. Let's go back. This is how his father was depicted. He is a ram with 4 horns. On top of the 4 horns, we see 9 serpents. On top of the heads of the 9 serpents, we see what you call the solar disc, which was the eye of Ra. Okay, Ra himself was depicted as a falcon. He also had this solar disc on his head. That is the eye of Ra. And yes, if you don't know, and Ra are part of a trinity. And, you know, Ra would be the Holy Spirit because he's the spiritual version. And he's a bird. Obviously, as we know, the Holy Spirit is depicted as a dove. Egyptian mythology, the Holy Spirit is depicted as a falcon. He also had this solar disc on his head. That is the eye of Ra. His eye was an eye of light, and it was single, just as Christ said. The light of the body is the eye, and if the eye be single, your body shall be full of light. That comes from Egyptian mythology and Egyptian beliefs. So that's what you see depicted right here with this god. So yes, a lot of paganism involved as well. You know, we see a being that is a sheep, right, or a ram, which is a adult sheep, adult lamb, He has 4 horns, right? And we could also say he has more than normal amount of eyes, because those things on top of their head could also represent eyes. And I'm going to explain something to you. JC is in fact the same thing, or one of the same things that was in the Garden of Eden and who tempted Adam and Eve. Okay? Because again, guys, JC does the same thing. Their whole duty is to weaken the nations. You know how powerful Adam and Eve were before they fell? You understand? That's their whole goal. Okay? That's their whole goal. And they do it through deceit. They do it through, I have good intentions for you. I want you to be stronger whole time. Right? They're trying to destroy you. And I'm going to show you. Now, this is the Greek version. This is the Greek version. It's a man with the horns of a ram. Okay? Now, another son of this deity was Alexander the Great, who also had horns. And he claimed that this was his father. Again, guys, the fallen ones did not hide this stuff back in those days. That's why JC was another one. Nebuchadnezzar was another one. That's why he told everybody to worship him, because he was one of them. That's what they want as well. They want worship, right? They want worship. King, the same thing. King of Tyre, right? These entities come down as kings or influential people, and they want worship and they want admiration. Alexander the Great and JC, they're brothers. They're actually brothers. They have the same daddy. I'm just going to be completely honest. This is how JC was described while in heaven. When they seen JC in heaven, they didn't see him looking like a man like they did on earth. When they seen JC in heaven, this is how they described him. Revelation 5 and 6. And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and the 4 beasts, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. So this is JC, man, as a ram. Now, notice it says a lamb instead of a ram. But let's be honest, lambs cannot have horns, can they? If a lamb has horns, that means it's grown. And if a lamb is grown, it's a ram. Right? So he is the ram, the same ram of the same ram of Zu, the same ram of Jup. Jup, that star of the east, that overlapped beam. So they seen the star of the east, and it also was very close to the Leo constellation. And they was like, okay, Lion of Judah. So they went to Bethlehem, because according to their prophecy that they misinterpreted from the Torah scrolls, that says, out of Bethlehem will come he that has glory, which was really talking about Hezekiah. They went to Bethlehem and they were looking for a baby that was born. They found JC and said, that's you. You know what I'm saying? But this is JC. This is what y'all worship. It's simple. Simple stuff, guys. Section 4. JC adds and takes away from Torah. Matthew 5 and 27. Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time. Notice how he never says it was said by Yah. See, the New Testament authors are always going to say Moses said something, or it's going to say that they said something. It's never going to say Yah commanded. The Lord commanded. Like I said, they didn't really mess with Yah like that. These people were Gnostics. All of them were. They believed that Yah was the demiurge. If y'all know anything about that, guys, they believed that Yah was evil and that JC was good. The whole world was enslaved by this evil being, and JC was here to take away his dominion. All right, that's what they believed. All right, so we're gonna build upon that, because it says, "Ye have heard it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you, that whosoever looketh upon a woman to lust after her have already committed adultery with her in his heart." So this is adding to the law, because we know that adultery is wrong, but now he's saying that even if you desire a woman, you are committing adultery in your heart, because lust just means to desire, guys. All right, now we go to the book of Matthew chapter 5 verse 31. He says, "It have been said, whosoever." So hold up. He's again not saying y'all saying it. It's just it's been said, right? "Whosoever shall put away his wife, let her give her a writing of divorcement." He said, "But I say unto you." That means, this is what I say. This is my word. My word overrides what y'all said, right? "That whosoever shall put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, causes her to commit adultery. And whosoever shall marry her that is divorced, committed adultery." Right? Now, both of these are false. Both of these statements. He said, whosoever divorces his wife causes her to commit adultery, and whosoever marries a woman who has been divorced is committing adultery. Now, I can debunk both of that with Deuteronomy chapter 24 and 1. "When a man hath taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he hath found some uncleanness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement, and give it in her hand, and send her out of his house. And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife." So y'all allows her to marry again. Y'all never said she is not allowed to marry again, because that's adultery. He never says that, right? So with that being said, a man is not committing adultery by marrying a divorced woman, and a woman is not committing adultery by marrying again after she divorced. Okay, so that means that verbatim JC has disagreed with the word of Yah. You understand? That's what that means right there. Now then we go to Matthew chapter 5 verse 33. He says, "Again, ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not forswear thyself, but perform unto the Lord thy oaths." For swear means to break your oath, right? Now Matthew 5 and 34 says, "But I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by the heaven, for is God's throne." Now look. But in verse 37 he says, "But let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay. For whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil." Meaning JC says, if you say anything except for I'm going to do something or I'm not going to do something, if you have to say, Yah, I'm not going to do it, or I swear by Yah that I'm not going to do it, then that is evil. He said that's evil. But this is what Yah said. He said, "Thou shalt fear Yahuwah thy Elohim and serve him, and shalt swear by his name." This is in the Torah. The Torah says we are allowed to swear by Yah's name as long as we're not swearing falsely, right? Some people have to make vows and oaths to stay disciplined. I know I do that. Something I do whenever I know that I'm being distracted and I need to get certain things done. I make oaths and vows to Yah to keep me on my track, to keep me disciplined, right? And that's a gift. That's a gift for those that fear Yah. But JC is taking that gift away and saying, do not swear at all, right? Exodus chapter 22 and 10 says, "If a man deliver unto his neighbor an ass or an ox or a sheep or any beast to keep, and it die or be hurt or be driven away, no man seeing it, then shall an oath of the Lord be between them both, that he have not put his hand unto his neighbor's good, and the owner of it shall accept thereof, and he shall not make it good. So understand, it's an oath Yah commands. But JC just said, do not make any vows, do not swear at all. And then of course we know about the vow of the Nazarite in Numbers chapter 6, which I didn't post, but Yah said, if you want to be very holy unto me, then make the vow of a Nazarite, right? But JC said, do not swear at all, right? Because you might break it. So don't swear. That's another form of taking your power away, because I know that when I became a Nazarite, I became very, very, very powerful, very spiritually powerful. And then I know that one of my vows is that I'm going to exercise every day except for the Sabbath. And one of my vows is that I'm going to try to work on something business related every day except for the Sabbath. Another one of my vows is that I'm not going to watch pornography, because I was addicted, and that's actually what broke my addiction. But now JC is saying, do not swear at all. And me making oaths and vows actually helped me along my journey, making me a better person. And see, JC sees that there's power in swearing and making oaths, so he took that away. A lot of y'all ain't seeing this because y'all don't actually study Torah. Y'all don't actually apply Torah to your lives. Now, Matthew 5:38 said, ye have heard that it has been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, meaning this is my idea, this is what I say, that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. So first of all, that statement, resist ye not evil, or ye resist not evil, is diabolical. Because that can apply to so many things, guys, not just being slapped. JC says if somebody does something evil to you, you are not to resist it. You are not to fight back, guys. You are to let that happen, and you are to basically put yourself in a position for that to happen again. Think about a slave being taught this. Think about how the slave master can twist this verse so that the slave can be manipulated into all kinds of things, right? Slave master can tell the slave, look, yes, I'm going to grape you tonight, but look, JC said, resist not evil, right? He said, turn the other cheek. So that means you should ask for it again. See, I'm not trying to be, vile in my speech, but this is actually some real stuff we have to think about. How can this text be used, wrong, right? But JC has literally said, do not resist evil. That's crazy. That means do not defend yourself. Do not try to get justice for physical harm, right? That's crazy, right? And that also goes into the weakening of, and we're going to talk about how that actually affected the people who lived in Judea when the Romans invaded. Why they didn't fight back, and why they had to flee, and how the Romans collapsed Judea, and how Judea fell under the Romans because of JC, because he weakened their empire. I'm going to explain that, guys. We already know about the 70 AD, how, what happened when the Romans went to that land in 70 AD. We already know about what happened, guys. That wouldn't have happened if JC wouldn't have came. JC made them weak. JC told them, do not resist them. If they persecute you, that's supposed to happen. Just flee into the mountains. We're going to get into all that, guys. I'm telling you. Now, anyway, Leviticus chapter 24:19. If a man cause a blemish in his neighbor, as he hath done, so shall it be done to him. Breach for breach, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. As he hath caused a blemish in a man, so shall it be done to him again. Who said this? Did a man say this? Did Moses make this up? No, this is what Yah said, right? If you go to the beginning of his chapter, it said, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, right? That's the first verse. So I don't understand how JC just feels like he has the audacity to completely and utterly disagree, change, and add to the words of the Most High. Then JC says, judge not, and ye shall not be judged. This is what JC said. Condemn not, and ye shall not be condemned. Forgive, and ye shall be forgiven. The only thing I agree with is the forgive part, but you can't judge people? Y'all set up judges? Y'all set up judges in our land for no reason, right? We can't condemn people. That means we can't get people put to death, when that's literally throughout Torah. Y'all said certain people need to get put to death. And JC said, don't do those things. No. Right? Look. Leviticus 19:15. Ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty, but in righteousness thou shalt judge thy neighbor. So y'all says judge thy neighbor, but make sure you judge thy neighbor in righteousness. Okay? So in John 8:4, right? It says, they said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery. That means she was caught in adultery, in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such shall be stoned. But what sayest thou? So that's saying, look, Moses said, even though this was y'all saying this, that if a person gets caught in the act of adultery by two or more witnesses, they should be stoned. But what do you say, JC? What do you say, JC? So this is what JC said. So when they continue asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, he that is without sin among you, let him cast a stone at her. Let him first cast a stone at her. So JC is saying that only those who are perfect can judge anybody, because we all sin. So therefore, none of us is worthy of putting someone to death for their sin. Now, show me where in Torah did y'all say such a thing. First of all sin is not equal, okay? Adultery is more than lying or something like that, right? Certain sins require the death. Now, clearly these are not real Israelites. They're cosplaying as Israelites, but they're Edomites. And that's why they don't have any priests. You don't see any priests involved in here. We just have scribes, Pharisees, and stuff like that. We don't have any priests involved. And that's why, JC should have said, this is what JC should have said, where's the man at? Because the man and the woman are supposed to be put to death. If you caught her in the act, that means you must have caught the man too. So where's the man, right? But JC didn't say that. He just said don't punish people for adultery, which is clearly against what it says in Torah. But there's no priest involved. In such case, in scripture, they would have brought both the people, the man and the woman, to the judges, and the judges would have took the matter to the priests, and the priests would have used the Urim and Thummim to communicate with y'all, and y'all would let them know if the person should be put to death or if they should live, right? But of course, these weren't actually Israelites, so they were just going to stone the woman right off the bat, without doing any type of, diligent inquisition whatsoever. Now, anyway, this is what JC said to them. He said, ye judge after the flesh, I judge no man. Ye judge after the flesh. What does that mean? He's saying you judging for something that they're doing instead of their heart, essentially. But then JC says, I judge no man. I don't judge people. But y'all commanded that you're supposed to judge people. You're supposed to judge your neighbor in righteousness. JC said, I judge no man. How can he be a follower of y'all if he doesn't even judge people? As followers of y'all, we're supposed to judge people. Christians think judging is wrong because they was deceived by this entity, right? But judging helps us. See, judge just means to rebuke, correct, or in some cases to put punishment on people. But it doesn't always mean to put punishment on people. It could mean simply letting your brother know, hey, what you're doing is wrong and you need to stop. That's what we're supposed to be doing as Israelites. JC said, I judge no man. Now I want you to see some of the slick language that JC uses. He says, and yet if I judge, my judgment is true, for I am not alone, but I and the Father that sent me. Right? Then next verse says, it is written in your law, that the testimony of two men is true. Notice how he said your law. If I'm arguing with a guy and I say, but it says in your law, that would insinuate that I don't really agree with it, right? I'm just saying your law, like, you know, to pull from your text. Just like when I argue with New Testament Israelites, I'll be like, doesn't it say in your New Testament that blank, 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 right? Because I don't agree with the New Testament, but I'm trying to use the New Testament, so because you contradicting your own book, so I'm showing you, doesn't it say in your New Testament, right? JC is saying, doesn't it say in your law? This is slick language. JC does not like the Torah, right? JC is against Torah. I'm trying to show you guys, y'all not believing it. I'm telling y'all not believing it. Now look, section 5, JC's poor attitude towards Yah. His love for him is just a front. Let me tell you something. JC act like he love Yah so much, bro. Like, if you see like how he talks and all this other stuff, he's just doing that just to kind of have the people listen to him. But deep down, he doesn't have any love for Yah. He does not fool with Yah whatsoever. Like, look, Mark chapter 10 verse 19. Thou knowest the commandments. Do not commit adultery. Do not kill. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness. Do not defraud. Honor your father and mother. Notice he didn't even mention the first 4 that have to do with Yah. He didn't mention have no other gods before me. He didn't mention do not make any idols. He didn't mention do not take Yah's name in vain. He didn't mention keep the Sabbath day holy. Because we also caught JC lacking on the Sabbath. He and his disciples was walking through a cornfield on the Sabbath picking corn. We caught JC doing that. He don't respect the Sabbath. Right? So JC has a poor attitude towards Yah. He completely ignored all the commandments that have to do with Yah. He just talked about the ones about people. Right? Now look. John 8 and 44. This is right after, right? The woman was about to get punished for adultery, right? This is the same chapter, a few verses down. Right? He said, ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. This is him going off on the people who are about to stone the woman. He's saying Yah is the devil. Because look, he said, he was a murderer from the beginning. He was a murderer from the beginning. What was they trying to do to the woman? They're trying to kill the woman because she committed adultery. And now they saying you're like your father, the devil, because he was a murderer from the beginning. So what is that insinuating, guys? He's saying to put the woman to death for committing adultery equals murder. And he's also saying, because you do this, you get this from your father, because your father is a murderer. Okay. Understand, peep game, what JC is saying. He's saying the actual God of the Jews is a murderer and is the devil. Okay. JC is a Gnostic. I'm trying to explain this to you. He thinks he's the good one. He thinks Yah is the bad one. He didn't really mess with Yah. Let me show you a little part. Section 6. His plan to weaken the nations of the earth, starting with his own people. Right? Look how he said in Matthew chapter 5. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now let me explain. This verse might sound good and pretty to your ears, but this is a tactic, guys. He wants you to believe that if you're persecuted, you're blessed. But that's the opposite of what Yah says. Yah says if you're persecuted, you're cursed. Those who are blessed are protected. Their lives are going to be good. They're going to be safe. They're going to dwell in peace in the land. They're not going to be persecuted, guys. That's what Yah said, right? In Deuteronomy 28, right? So with that being said, JC is now saying, oh, don't get too mad if you're persecuted, because that means you're blessed. And that's why in Matthew chapter 24:9, he says, then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. JC said, you're going to be afflicted for my name's sake. If you follow me, they will hate you. They will afflict you. Okay? So, again, JC is literally weakening the nations because he's getting them prepared for what's to come. In Luke chapter 21:16 says, and ye shall be betrayed both by parents and brethren and kinsfolks and friends, and some of you shall they cause to be put to death. Okay, this is what he wanted. He wanted the division. He wanted all this chaos, right? And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. When did y'all ever say anything like this? When did y'all ever say, for righteousness' sake, you're going to be hated and killed because you're righteous? What? That's completely the opposite of what y'all said, guys. That's a complete... And Christians, like, I'm sorry to say, a lot of y'all are just so dumb because y'all running towards the fire. Y'all are like chickens running to the highway. You guys do not realize that JC literally told you, follow me, you die. Follow me, you die. Follow me, you die. The Old Testament tells you, if you sin, you die. You sin, you die. You sin, you die. What does that mean? That means to follow Christ, you are sinning. Guys, it's just that simple. Right now, look. And when you see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Judea will be a desolation according to JC. What did he say about every kingdom divided will be a desolation? Then he said, I will make all these people divided. I'm not going to send peace but a sword. Right? This was all intentional. This was all his plot and his plan to destroy his own people first. Right? Y'all not even thinking. Destroy his own people. This is what he's trying to do. He said, then let them which are in Judea flee into the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter therein too. So JC saying, when you see the armies flee, any other person, any other actual savior would have said, fight, 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 destroy them, utterly take them down. Do not be afraid. I will deliver their army into your hands. Right? Any actual person sent by Yah would have said that. But now he said flee. He told them be scary and run away. Why? Because that correlates with do not resist evil. Do not resist evil. Don't try to fight. Right? Now this, believe it or not, I'm going to read this. Because of this, early Christians did not help the other inhabitants of Judea fight against the Romans in 70 AD. They fled. And thus Judea fell into the hands of Rome. Because look, half of them they were divided. Half of them fled and half of them fought. If they all would have fought, they probably would have won. If they all would have fought, they probably would have won. You understand? So with that being said, he divided his people out so that they could be destroyed. He divided his people out so they could be destroyed, to weaken his own people. He was a sellout. And then now look, we're going to talk about how this affects Israel, how this affects us to this day. Mark 16:15. And he said unto them, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel unto every creature. That's the whole world. You see this map? All the blue is Christian countries. Dark blue mean more percentage of Christians. Lighter blue mean less percentage of Christians. Right? However, how did Christianity spread to all these regions? By the sword, by the whip, by the chain, through enslavement, torture, and death. That's how Christianity spread to the whole world. So with that being said, JC literally did come to bring a sword. He literally did come to weaken the nations, right? He literally came to bring conflict and confusion upon the earth. Just like his brother Alexander the Great, he conquered from sea to sea in a different way, right? He literally he built his kingdom, he built his house upon blood. He built his city upon blood. Go read Habakkuk chapter 2, and you'll see this is about JC as well. That whole chapter, Habakkuk chapter 2, is about JC, and it's also about Nebuchadnezzar at the same time, because they're the same person, right? So I just want y'all to understand, man, I don't think y'all even believe, y'all think I'm crazy, but it is what it is. I'm showing you guys the evidence and the proof. It's there, man. Now, additional stuff. JC commands that you have to be baptized to be saved. This is something that's not found in the Old Testament. And he also commanded the rich man to sell all his property in order to, because the rich man, he knew the commandments and he followed the commandments from birth, right? And JC said, you know, one thing wrong with you is that you're rich, and you're not going to be able to follow me unless you sell everything that you have, right? And that's not found anywhere in the Old Testament, right? The Torah teaches us that to be prosper in the earth is a sign that Yah loves us and blessing us because we keep the commandments. Yah never tells us that we have to sell everything that we have acquired from our blessings. That's crazy. So I want you guys to understand. JC said, look, Yah has blessed you with all this good stuff. You're rich, you know, but sell it all, man. Be poor. This is see, because again, the New Testament is a book to cause people to be weakened. As JC said, it's easier for a camel to fit through the head of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter to the kingdom of heaven, right? But Yah said he would give us riches. So why would Yah give us riches if he knows that with riches, we're not going to be able to ever succeed spiritually? I'm not going to say kingdom of heaven, because the Torah Tanakh perspective of kingdom of heaven is completely different than the New Testament's perspective. However, I am going to say that, you know, JC is in fact Lucifer. The New Testament is in fact a book of witchcraft, and I hate making New Testament videos because I have to read this evil book, because I know how this book actually changed the world, but I also know that Yah did it for a purpose, because this was the only way the children of Yahshua was going to get the Torah and the Tanakh back in our hands through Christianity, because Christianity would not be able to be understood without the Torah Tanakh, right? So it's put into one book, and the Europeans bring this to the whole world, and they ran with it. So, and Yah sent the Europeans against us for our sins. So it only makes sense as to why Christianity was created, and it was all Yah's plan. Now I'm about to share with y'all something very deep. All right, section 7, him as the serpent's seed. All right. First, we must understand that the serpent in the Garden of Eden was not a literal snake. If we pay attention closely to the scriptures, we will see that the serpent was an Elohim, or some type of mighty one. That's what Elohim means. Possibly representing the fallen ones in general. All right. Genesis 3 and 4. And the serpent said unto the woman, you shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Okay? So, with that being said, the serpent was the first one to disagree with the Most High, change the Most High's laws, and command humanity something different from what the Most High said. You understand? Are you starting to get the gist? And he did it in a way that it seems like he cares about the people, but he's actually trying to destroy them. Okay? Now you see that? And he goes to the woman. Now pay attention to Christ, how Christ behaved with women versus men. He's all extra kind to the women in the New Testament. To the men, he called them out their name. He called them the son of the devil, this, that, and the third. You know what I'm saying? But do you think Christ actually cared about the women? No, he just know that if he wins the heart of the women, he wins the heart of society. Because women are the ones at home with their children. Women control what the children will believe. They know that. So that's why they go to the woman. That's how it works. They know that the women is the most influential part of society. A woman can make a man believe what she wants to make a man believe. Think about it. Solomon, perfect example. Right? Think about Samson, perfect example. Right? Women, right, are the ones that can really control the narrative. And these fallen know that. Now, clearly the serpent himself had knowledge of evil, and therefore he must be one of the gods. Because, see, the beasts of the field don't know the knowledge of good and evil, right? In the eyes of the beasts of the field, life is just life. They don't have a concept of good and bad, right? Humans didn't have that concept yet either. So who was the only ones that had the concept of good and bad? The gods. But the serpent clearly had that concept because he's the one introducing it to Eve. So if the serpent had that concept, what does that mean? The serpent is one of the Elohim. All right. So let's continue. Why did the author of Genesis choose to use a serpent to represent this entity? It was a part of Hebrew culture to associate certain spiritual traits with animals. The children of Israel in the Exodus and afterwards associated the Most High himself with a calf, hence why they repeatedly made golden calves to worship Yah. This is because they associated both Yah and calves with a guaranteed good future. Because a calf being born guaranteed meat, leather, milk, and help in the field. So basically, if a calf was born, especially a female calf, they knew that they were going to live. They knew that they were going to survive, right? That's why Yah chose to use a heifer, which is a female calf, to purify Israel, right? Because we chose to continue to worship that thing. Now, serpents represented two major things: affliction as well as wisdom or prudence. The ancient Hebrews would have associated this entity with a serpent because whatever this entity was a master manipulator. All right. The serpent that was in the Garden of Eden was some type of spiritual being, some type of cherubim, seraphim, whatever. But whatever it was a master manipulator. It was good at saying anything to change your mind from its current belief. You understand? That's why it said he was very subtle. The word subtle, arum in Hebrew, translates to prudent, wise, crafty, cunning, right? The New Testament says that Christ is wiser than Solomon. And that would make sense if he's a fallen. Because look at how he manipulated this world, man. Look at how he really manipulated this world. Just like the serpent, which are the fallen. Now, I also want to point out something that's very interesting. During the Exodus, there was an event that involved serpents as well. Numbers chapter 21, verse 6, and Yahuwah sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died. Therefore the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned, for we have spoken against Yahuwah and against thee. Pray unto Yahuwah that he may take away the serpents from us. Look at how the children of Israel are using Moses as a mediator, bro. They were so afraid to talk to Yah. Like they did not pray. They literally did not pray to Yah. They always went to Moses and said, oh, pray for us. You know, look how they used Moses as this mediator, bro. That's why they kept getting their ass whooped in the Exodus. And when Moses disappeared, they had to make the calf to use that as a mediator. And now we need a mediator again to get to the Most High. Like, just pray to Yah. You don't need Christ in the way. That's something that has been in our people's mind for a long time, and I don't know why. Why do you guys think you can't pray to Yah himself? Why do you think you have to go through somebody else to get to Yah? Why do you think that? They've been thinking that since the Exodus. You see it right here in your face. They had to go through Moses to get to Yah. They had to go through a golden calf to get to Yah. Now we're going through a lamb to get to Yah. We're going through Christ to get to Yah. It don't make sense. Anyway, and Yahuwah said unto Moses, make thee a fiery serpent, and set it upon a pole, and it shall come to pass that every one that is bitten, when he look upon it, shall live. Now, a lot of Christians use this as a foreshadowing of Christ. So, and Moses made a serpent of brass and put it on a pole, and it came to pass that if a serpent had bitten any man, when he beheld the serpent of brass, he lived. Now, many people may ask, why would Yah save the people through this image of a serpent on a pole? Because this was a sign and a wonder, okay? Even the word pole translates to a word that means sign, nasas or nas, right? It's a sign, basically a flag pole. It's meant to be a sign, right? It's meant to show people, hey, look, this is a sign. Right? So clearly this was a sign. So what does the sign mean? The serpent on a pole represented affliction and wisdom. The people would have understood this because they understood what every animal represented. They knew what the lion represented. They knew what the snake represented. They knew what the ox represented, the calf represented, the sheep represented. They knew the spiritual trait of every animal. Because these are ancient people we're dealing with. They were more in tune with nature. So when they seen the serpent, they would understand what this sign mean if they had any form of wisdom, right? So the serpent on a pole represented affliction and wisdom being lifted up. How does one lift up their affliction and wisdom? Through repentance, right? When you repent, you lift up your affliction in wisdom, right? Everyone who looks upon this sign was healed because this was Yah simply showing us poetically that repentance and pouring out our affliction unto Yah is how we will be healed. Just that simple. But this is what Christ said. John 3:14. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so the Son of Man shall be lifted up, that whosoever believe in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. And then you already know what the next verse says. That's what every Christian's favorite verse is, right? And he repeats, shall not perish, but have eternal life. Now, doesn't that sound familiar, right? Christ essentially says that he is a serpent. He basically he says it. But not only that, in verse 15, he says something strikingly similar to what the serpent said in the garden. You shall not die. All right. in contrary to what y'all said, because why are you going through an idol to get to him? Y'all said if you do that, you shall die. But Christ is saying you're not going to die. You're going to have eternal life. He's doing the same thing. So when we go into Genesis 3 and 14, it says, and Yahuwah Elohim said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all the cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. This clearly represents a fallen state. The poetic symbolism would have you imagine a snake on his belly in the dust, but that's intentional. But anyone who actually falls on the ground will be in the same position. So just imagine somebody tripping on a rock and they fall on their belly, right? You know, a little bit of dust might go in their mouth, they belly hitting that ground. So this simply represents a fall. A fall. Okay? Something that was once high, now low. That's what this represents. Even Nebuchadnezzar experienced this personally. Now, Nebuchadnezzar, guys, is one of the serpent seed too. But that would have to be another video because we're focused on Christ. But I'm going to show you how this correlates with Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel 4 and 32. And they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. And they shall make thee to eat grass as an oxen, and 7 times shall pass over thee, until thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and give it to whomsoever he will. So this would happen to Nebuchadnezzar. He was a king on the throne, but all of a sudden he went insane, went into the wilderness, and started eating up grass. His nails started growing long. If you read the next verse, his hair started growing long. And probably just in the naked and everything. So it's kind of like that's a fallen state. And he's cursed. He's like the cattle. He's literally like the cattle. Just like it said in Genesis. So, but that's besides the point. Now let's see how that corresponds with Christ, because Deuteronomy 21 and 23 talks about somebody's hanged on a tree. It says, his body shall not remain all night upon the tree, but thou shalt in any wise bury him that day. For he that is hanged is accursed of God. If you get hung, you are cursed. Our ancestors were hung because they were cursed. They were under the curse of Deuteronomy 28. So Christ being hung would mean that he is cursed. But what curse would he be under? Right? Would he be under the curse of Deuteronomy 28? Can't be. If he's God, why would God be under the curse of Deuteronomy 28? Right? So what curse is he under? The same curse of the serpent. Galatians 3 and 13. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. Even the New Testament says Christ is a curse. It's just that simple. Now Genesis 3 and 15 says, and I will put enmity, that means hatred, beef, right, between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. That's the first point. It shall bruise thy head. That's the second point. And thou shalt bruise his heel. That's the third point. Now we're about to get a little deep. All right. The fallen ones in general are known to afflict women specifically, especially through child sacrifice, which every fallen one around the world commanded. Did y'all know that? All the gods of every nation, all the idols, for some reason, of every nation around the world, they were sacrificing children and humans to these gods. Because these fallen ones were actually communicating with their shamans or their priests of whatever culture, and they were telling them, hey, look, you gotta sacrifice babies, man. And the mothers would hear this and cry, and they would be secretly against these gods. Okay? Now, even Mary was a victim of this, having to see her son on the cross. Mary's child was sacrificed. right? The seed of Mary was Christ, right? The seed of the woman. And the seed of the serpent was also Christ. Obviously, Mary seeing her son in such a blemished and tortured state will cause her to have enmity towards whoever's idea it was for him to be on that cross. Again, his father. It was his father's will for him to be on that cross. We already talked about who his father is. His father is Amra, the serpent, a serpent. If you look at his picture, he has like 9 serpents on top of his head, with the eye of Ra on every serpent, or also known as the solar disc. Right, the eyes are open. Right, the eyes are open. The eye of Ra, the light of the body is the eye. Christ was then used as an excuse to rip up families during slavery all around the world. He was the driving factor behind babies being ripped from the arms of their mothers. Guys, the biggest slavery event in human history happened because of Christianity. I hope y'all understand that. Because of Christianity. I mean, slavery has always existed. There's no denying that. But when you enslave an entire continent in 1 or 2 centuries, that's insane, guys. Do y'all realize when Europeans came to North, Central, and South America, they literally either killed or enslaved everybody who they came across, right? I hope y'all understand that. And that was simply because of Christianity. The reason why they branched out into that area is because they were trying to spread the gospel. Like, that's what Christopher Columbus kept saying in his diaries. I'm trying to spread the gospel. One of his major goals was to evangelize the Indies, which means to convert them into Christianity, right? So that whole thing, he also started the slave trade. He was literally the starter of the slave trade. So that whole thing started because of Christianity, guys. Like, seriously. Like, it doesn't get no more simple than that. But I'm jumping ahead. So on the second point, the most obvious example of someone's head being bruised in the entire Bible, correct me if I'm wrong, is the people placing a crown of thorns on the head of Christ. Because this was a form of torture. They would have stabbed into his head deeply. I was reading up one time about this. They said it was a specific type of thorn bush that they used that had like 3-inch thorns that were hard as rock that they tightened around his head. And as soon as they put it on his head, the blood would have just been dripping down all in his eyes and everything like that. So with that being said, oh yeah, his head was definitely bruised. Bruised would be an understatement. Now, my third point, how did Christ bruise the heel of humanity? That's very simple. By him initiating missionaries. Who are the missionaries? People going all around the world on foot. His disciples had to travel all around Europe and Asia on foot to spread this gospel. Crusades, Europeans traveling to the Middle East to fight against the Arabs to establish Christianity in Jerusalem, which they thought was Jerusalem. And then you had the American Crusades, which happened 200 years later with Columbus. Yeah, he definitely bruised some people's heels. The Spaniards, all them people coming over here, walking up and down California, Arizona, Mexico, Peru, walking up and down, converting these people, enslaving these people. And then once the people get enslaved, they working. Now they heels bruised. Now let's think about this. Converting the entire world by force, enslaving those who were not Christians. It was a law in Spain that anyone you conquer, if they were not Christian, you have the right to enslave them. In fact, you should enslave them. So you think there were Christians in the Americas No. So guess what? That gave them all the right to enslave every single American. When the Portuguese went to Africa, they had all the right to enslave every African because they were not Christians. What does a slave do? A slave works. And if you're working, what's going to hurt? Your feet. Because you don't get to sit down. He's bruising the heel of humanity, enslaving those who are not Christians, as well as giving rise to Islam. Guys, without Christianity, there would be no Islam. I just want y'all to understand that Islam is just a very old form of Christianity. In the Quran, Mary, the mother of Christ, has a whole book dedicated just to her. So yes, Islam is a part of Christianity. So quite literally, if it wasn't for Christianity, the slave trade wouldn't be a thing. Neither the Arab or European slave trades would have never happened. These events were fueled by the need to convert the religions of other people, an idea that was birthed by Christ himself. So Mark 16:15, and he said unto them, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Okay. So here Christ is bruising the heel of all his disciples and all early Christians by telling them to go through the world. So Christ bruised humanity's heels in multiple ways, right? Through missionaries, people, traveling to convert people, through wars, through conquest, and through the victims of those wars and conquest, slavery. So with that being said, guys, yes, Christ is indeed a serpent seed.